everyone. Um, really good to see you all here again. So, our Inspira series, our second talk. And those of you that came last week will know that this year these talks were in collaboration with Design Factory. Design Factory, a research group, as well. Gemma's going to talk a little bit more about Design Factory in a moment. But this year, we're in collaboration with Design Factory. We're looking and focusing more locally, the local spotlight on local creativity through these talks over the series, and exploring that local community. Okay, so over to Gemma to talk about design.
Hi everyone, I'm Gemma Potter, Research Associate here in the Design Department, so a lot of you guys won't have seen me before, but hopefully you will a bit more in the future. Just to give you a little overview, Design Factory is a new innovation hub here at Manchester School of Art, and we see it as a vehicle for our community of practitioners, researchers and students, which is you guys, to design locally based sustainable development with the potential to reach well beyond our city. And as Fabrizio just said then, we're trying to bring in this time to our Inspira Talks a real sort of local creative sort of narrative to the story. And tonight we're doing that under the theme of connecting the past with the future. Making and craft practices are broad-reaching, touching our everyday lives through the objects we use and the spaces we inhabit. As a discipline, deeply connected to people and places, craft and making draw on past traditions, linking us with our own heritage and other cultures, enabling us to connect and communicate with others through methods that transcend language. Through making and engagement with materials, we must act responsibly and ethically and consider our impact upon the world and the people in it. The Inspira series seeks to shine a light on creative practices and explore how they connect and support sustainable communities. And tonight we have Emiko, Coral from Emiko Studios and Maywell Studio. And they are exemplars of contemporary practices that draw on traditional craft to honour the past in ways that reflect current issues and open up dialogues about our collective future. And kicking us off tonight, we have Rebecca and Michael of Maywell Studios. They are artists, designers and educators and co-founders of social arts practice Maywell Studio, creating artwork challenging the conventions between visual art and traditional craft making. Using storytelling, collaboration and participatory projects, their work raises awareness and encourages conversation around themes of storytelling, people, place and local or global environmental issues, combining traditional craft methods with new technologies and materials. They're passionate about the co-create process and working with people to create art. Maywell Studio have over 20 years combined arts and teaching and engagement experience across Greater Manchester and the UK in further education, higher education, colleges, schools, community groups, galleries, museums and charities. And without further ado, I will pass over to them now. So, one for you.
Hi everybody.
Hello? Right, perfect, it's working.
Just try to get the tone right.
Right, okay, I'm going to introduce us. So we are Maywell Studio, we are a social arts practice, and today we're going to sort of touch on really our journey in the creative industries. We started as artists, designer makers, and our practice has actually evolved. We've gone on quite a journey really, and we're now a social arts practice. So we're just going to run through a little bit of that story for you.
Okay.
So we'll start with introducing ourselves. I'm Rebecca May. I describe myself as an artist, designer and educator. I'm actually a second careerist. I was a building surveyor for 14 years. And I came back here, as it happens, as a mature student and studied 3D design, specialising in ceramics.
I'm Michael. I initially studied fine art ceramics at Bretton Hall, which is now the Yorkshire Sculpture Park, which is a part of Leeds University. I've been teaching for about 20 years now, at foundation level, further education and higher education. I teach 3D design and fine art sculpture. I did my masters, ironically, my show was right next door. It was a big shed with loads of clay pots falling down a conveyor belt, so it's a bit surreal. I did that in about 2012, and then worked independently as an artist, working at British Ceramics Biennial, And then we just decided to collaborate, didn't we? Yeah. So next slide.
So this is actually the start of our collaboration. It's in our property we lived in South Manchester, and we made a decision to create a pop-up gallery in our home. We hadn't really worked together before, so it kind of planted the seed for our collaborative practice, Maywild Studio. And you want to talk a bit more about it?
Yeah. We decided we had lots of friends that were makers that had graduated from Manchester or were working in Manchester. And they felt like they were tied by the markup of commission rates on galleries. So we decided as a bit of an experiment to knock that markup down to about 15%, which was brilliant for them. And we just said, use the space, make exhibitions, have that creative freedom. We did some amazing things. It was very communal. We wanted to connect the maker with the community. We did the Meet Your Maker nights, where the community would come in and pretty much engage with looking at the process. People would make, throw pots, and then obviously sell their work and have a conversation with people and the users. But it was a really integral part of us working together and thinking this was brilliant, and the people that we were promoting were loving it, but we thought, well, maybe we should try our own practice together.
So when we decided to become Maywild Studio, we were mentored by the Crafts Council, their Hot House programme, and that was actually a real starting point for us. You know, it was a really brilliant sort of programme to really show us and help us understand where our fit was in the creative industries, help us really fine-tune who we were as artists and makers and designers, and really learn our craft as well.
Yeah, and they were brilliant because as artists, we just loved making things. We loved the ideas, the concepts, but we didn't really have that understanding of where we fit in the industry, who was our target audience. These little boring things we thought we didn't want to know about, we just wanted to create, but they were very essential to have a sustainable practice, not only in the things and materials and processes we use, but sustainable practice in being successful and have longevity as well. So they really established us to recognise core values within our work, what they were, what did they represent. And that gave us a bit of a chronological structure to make a plan and the way that we set our business together.
So we actually launched our practice in 2017, was it? No. Yeah, and this was 2019, was it, I think? I'm trying to remember the date that we launched at London Design Fair, and it was actually really successful for us. We launched one of our first designs, which was our Coo Bird, and that was based on the Manchester pigeon at Piccadilly Gardens.
Yeah, because we're from fine art backgrounds as well, but we work in design. Our skill was making, so more analogue, making, mould making, craft work, hand building. But we like that tongue-in-cheek reference of trying to making something beautiful out of something vilified. So many moons ago, from a night out in Sankey's, whoever remembers that nightclub, we walked back, went through Piccadilly, and we saw these pigeons eating out of a KFC box. So we decided to think, can we make something that's quite beautiful about that represents Manchester, represents that community, and we love the idea of a story. So we created these by hand, and as you can see, the plumage of the bird is represented in the colour. Their hats represent party hats, this idea of a night in the town. And we did our kind of gold bird poos. It's the best way we can describe it. Is when you reach your career, when you make 500 prototypes, the perfect poo splat. But what we wanted to do was just have a little bit of humour within there, but also underpin it with hand-making skills as well.
I think we went on a real journey with this bird. You know, we absolutely pushed ourselves to the limit of how we make, because we wanted to make it absolutely perfect. And it really took time. You know, we went on such, at times, painful journey in making this bird, you know, and getting it to work and getting it to look right, the packaging, everything. It taught us an awful lot, you know, and it taught us a lot about handmade and how you can survive. Can you survive as a maker? Can you earn a living from the handmade? And it also showed us something really important, and that was about how our objects we were making were connected to storytelling.
Yeah, and as you can see here, there's little references of the pigeon carrier, the pigeon community. So we worked with, we've met interesting people that were actual pigeon collectors and raisers. We worked with manufacturers and producers as well. And it were these things that opened our awareness. What do we want to do? When we were saying we were hand makers, but we wanted to sell, it seemed a little bit of a kind of a contradiction in terms. We wanted to make these things bespoke, but we wanted to sell them. And we went down the road of manufacturing. We felt that the manufacturers were saying, look, this is a great product, but we're not emotionally invested in this to make it the way you want us to make it. So we kind of found through that process what we wanted to do and what we wanted to make as well. And this is just a quick pigeon scroll of where we wanted to connect our work with the owners or the users. So we put one of these in there, and they were worldwide sold. They were amazing. And we just said, when you find your bird, put it in its new home, photograph it, and put it in the bird world community. And we got some fantastic photographs from that on Instagram.
And just to say that, you know, this was a really popular design for us. We sold it all over the world, but we struggled to survive financially. So even though it was really popular and we kept selling them, we kept having to bring the price up. And we knew that we couldn't ultimately keep making it if we didn't go into batch production, if we didn't go into working with a company in Stoke, for example. And actually, that was a real sort of, you know, difficult process as well. So in the end, we actually stepped back a little bit and we looked at just making to order and limited editions and making it on our terms.
Yeah, but also the idea of sustainability started to kind of really highlight what things you use, the amount of materials you use, the energy you use just to make that one product. And this is an example of that. All of these individual components went to making that piece. And we just thought we need to start thinking about reduction, how we make what we make with, and what that would be. So sustainability doesn't have to be something that could be just circular economy or circular design. If you make something of beauty that is durable, that is just as important. It's like working with plastic. It's a material that is a very important material. It's just used badly in mass production. So this was a real big highlight about how our practice started to change and evolve. And we started to looking at making small batch production as well, didn't we?
Yeah, so this is like an extension of our coo bird. This is our little poo-poo brooch. So actually we're learning the lessons now, you know, and we're working now with small batch production, and this is how we made this design. So it came in at a much more accessible price. You know, we were involved in making the prototype and we worked with others to make it as a design we could sell. And this actually now sells across design stores in Europe. We don't have a lot of input, we just get the payment come through, basically.
Nice.
So, you know, we're learning as we go.
Yeah, and this one was, again, it was about, if we could say, when you want to start your business, is get out there, network, do the things that you go, I don't want to go out there tonight, but do it. 99% of success is being there, and these incidental, accidental things are really important for your practice. And this is where we met somebody from Bistro in London, which was a really cool restaurant. And they had an anniversary, and they got some real big hitters, friends of theirs, of illustrators from fashion industry, from design industry. And they asked us to create a plate for their anniversary. So again, we decided that what we do is to make something beautiful out of something quite ugly or quite vile and crude. I don't want to really analyse that too much, but that was the kind of the process that we used. So
they gave us a lot of creative freedom to do whatever we wanted to do, and that was really, you know, really great brief actually. And also we didn't have to make it, you know, so that was something else that felt like pretty special. It was for a restaurant. We knew that they had a really open-minded, creative approach. So we thought, okay, we'll create our own brief. You know, what's the worst thing you can find on a restaurant plate? Well, it's hair. So we started to experiment with hair and what that would look like and the kind of patterns it would create.
And the second one, as you can guess now, was the Chef Blue plaster as well. So we wanted to use something where it was aesthetically pleasing, we hoped, but something that kind of gave a nod to this thing. And the best success we had was when we went to the opening, was that somebody was flicking one part, there's a little line there, and they thought it was like a hair, and we thought we've done it. That was the challenge. But again, it was what we could advise is, if you go into the industry, is know your limitations. We worked with a graphic designer who could do all these vector designs. We would have spent 2 weeks learning that, where he did it in a day. And that enabled us to have that creative freedom. So paying somebody £200, where we would have had 2 weeks' work would have been thousands. So we started to learn of having a bit of creative humility, that we can't do everything.
So I suppose what we're starting to understand about how we work is we're learning about collaboration, making sure that we open our minds really in our practice to collaborating with others. So we work in education, and a big part of why we work in education is about sharing our skills and our knowledge and that kind of knowledge exchange with others as well, and learning from others. So this is us here collaborating with Joe Hartley actually at Cultureplex, which I think it's now under different ownership. And this workshop was a really interesting workshop for us, because it made us start to really question also that sustainable element of our education practice.
And yeah, so the workshop was about clay, but it was an introduction about the different components of clay. So we went through the hydration stages of it, from that malleable greenware to using slips to using malachite, and we kind of used that as a way of just getting them to engage. And it's not a dirty word in design and art, but play. Just play and play and play. And what we did was, all of the excess waste, we had to challenge ourselves, because after the workshop they wanted us to produce something for the bar. So what we did, we loved that idea that everyone else's hands is on this, that we're the participants of this project. So we used that clay, we reprocessed it, we extruded it, and then that was a starting point to make the products that we made. And we loved the idea of that the hands of the participants were a part of the work. So that lone author that we see historical in art and design, we started to challenge it, and we'll show you that a bit further, that we become a bit more like facilitators in some way. And that's the piece we produced, didn't we? But we've done it in a very abstract way, so you can't see it properly. In hindsight, it would have been better to do it the other way.
So also now we're showing some slides about how we're starting to collaborate with social influencers, I suppose is the name. And this is actually Symmetry Breakfast. It's a few years ago. And we made a chewing gum platter. We knew again that his sort of creative ideas and vision were a little bit, he was open to it being a bit unusual, and we were able to sort of present our chewing gum platter to him and see what he thought. And we just reached out and asked him, and he actually came to Manchester, and we ended up doing a live sort of workshop with him. And then, he's got about 1 million followers, and he used our platters for one of his Instagram posts, and it generated a lot of interest in our work.
Yeah, and I think that's it, is don't be scared to ask. The worst case scenario is someone will say no. And I think what the beautiful thing is with this was, it was just connecting remotely. And then when he came physically, I think he came from Hong Kong, didn't he? And then we did this piece. We love doing this idea of that, the chewing gum under the table, but again, this malleable texture. We really suffered for our art for this. We had to chew Hubba Bubba chewing gum. You can't do it with extra. It didn't work because you had to freeze it and mould it. But what we did like doing is using unorthodox materials, and about knowing the limitations, knowing the personality of a material that's different to what we've been used to. And that opened up of how we could start using sustainable materials in the future.
And this is another collaboration as well. So this is when we're starting to work closer to home. We're working with small independents. So this is her first Instagram was actually called Art House, and it was an interior Instagram. And actually, Becky has moved now and become a maker herself, and she has an account, a very successful practice actually called Sasumi. We collaborated with her, and actually the piece you can see there, we've got it on display. It's a very, very minimal artwork we made, really suited her brand. And we displayed it on her Instagram, we gave her a piece, and actually that piece sold really, really well for us through her you know, through her sort of vision and interior styling.
Yeah, it's the great strategies. You know, we will lose minimal money by offering these for free, and we're tapping into a massive marketplace, a big reading list, a big subscription through social media, and it's a free platform. And also, it also brings our art influences. So that circle was very much inspired by Milovich's Black Square. It was the COVID period where we went for that hour walk with a family, and we picked up natural forms and we compressed them into these pieces, and this is what evolved into this artwork that we did for So Sue Me.
And again, this is just an example of reaching out locally. So this is Concept Store, and we start to develop workshops. We're starting to really think about our education and workshop and how we develop those. And we're thinking, okay, we want to create workshops that feel like people are making quality outcomes. So it's not lots and lots of making, it's about making something really special and of quality, and that being the outcome at the end. And this was our Jesmonite door number workshops, which again, is really, really popular.
Yeah, we started to call them the waste not want pieces. So we'll go back into that after we did this next stage. So this was just prior to COVID, where again, through the Craft Council, we were nominated to research how to export in Europe prior to Brexit, but that was what it was. And it was what we were doing. We were sponsored by the Department of International Trade to look at how we sell our work, what are the logistics of that, and make a toolkit for the next generation of makers, designers, so that they can tap into a broader worldwide network of selling the work.
And just to say that funded research trip to Denmark and Copenhagen, it sounds quite glamorous, and it was, a really great experience, but it had a really profound impact on us and our practice, because actually we were surrounded by so much design and objects and these vast design sort of shows, and we felt a bit overwhelmed. We were already asking questions about our practice, how we wanted to make. And we came away actually from that trip and we made quite a clear decision to change our practice and pull back from making and think about how we use our creativity and start to think about less about the objects and more about shifting to people and place.
Yeah, I think we were the next step, we were going to collect in London. So that was where we're like, finally we've arrived, this is our practice, this is what we want to be. And we just got the train home, and that Jerry Maguire moment, we went, no, we're not doing it. We don't want to do this. It didn't feel right. We didn't want to be complicit to making another pot, another chair en masse. We needed to start thinking about not the final aesthetic, more about the creative process and how we engage in that learning and how we share that as well. So these workshops were over the COVID period, where overnight we lost about £20,000 in commissions and funding because everybody withdrew. So we had to show innovation. I'm not saying we weren't okay, what's the strategy? We ran around like headless chickens for a week going, oh my God, what are we going to do? But these challenges are so important for your practice and the way that you make, the way that you think, because it started us to question, what else can we do to connect with another audience and another way of selling and being successful and sustaining our practice? And there were certain things that we did that we didn't really want to do, but they were so successful, and we made a living from it over a very tough period.
So the pandemic actually ended up shifting our practice quite rapidly. So the focus became local. It's not a bad thing. It was a really positive thing for our practice. It meant that we could access work locally. It also meant that the way people access art and design changed in that period because you couldn't go into spaces. So we started to see a lot more outside art or accessing art around window spaces and things like that. It was a challenge for us, but a really, really good one, because we were like, how do we use that space? How do we create something interesting in that space? So this is actually being the city. It was an art trail.
Yeah, and it's good with your practice because you can come up with your own challenges in your own projects in some respects. So we said this next project we're going to have zero waste, and it was really difficult, but what it was, it opened up another landscape of visual ideas. So we started to go into builders merchants, and we found this beautiful insulation board that reminded of us the Memphis movement, so, which we loved. And what you see here is what we created, but every piece of that work has now made our house far more energy efficient because we've repurposed. So we've done it internally for our home, but we went, wow, so it doesn't have to stop. An artwork we make, or a thing we do, an event we do, could have a legacy. And that's when our brain started to tick a little bit more and went, maybe we need to start reconsidering how we make and what we do. And it was an exciting period.
And this is another example of this accessing art through the pandemics. We were commissioned again to do another window that was all about a magical Christmas experience. So then we decided about materials. Again, we're thinking now about the materials we use and how they go forward, you know, where their lifespan, their life cycle. So we made it all out of paper. And actually there's 220 paper owls in this window, and they all then went to schools. So we actually dismantled it and we sent them all to primary schools, and they were all reused. They were laser cut birds. We worked and collaborated with Lazeria, Liam, and we made sure that that artwork had a life after its display.
Yeah, and again, it was knowing limitations. We made one by hand, and we just thought there's no way we're making 200 plus of these without retaining any sanity. So we, again, started to work with other people. And when you're working with other people, you're tapping into their skill set, the way they respond to a project. And all this paper that we got was from a local merchants. It was recycled, they were going to chuck it away. So it was, again, using something that would have just gone straight into landfill that we could reprocess and have some form of local legacy. We started to read the new white paper from the Arts Council, and that was about doorstep impact, about being more of a facilitator's role as an artist and designer. How can we connect locally? And initially we were like, we don't want to do local, we want to go to London, New York, and these wonderful kind of intoxicating places. And right in front of us was the inspiration we wanted. But it took a long way to go.
So this is a participating co-create artwork for Corridor Light for Royal Northern College of Music. And again, this is working with people. So we're really starting to now step into the pandemic, is, coming out of lockdown, and we get commissioned for this, and we get to work directly with people, not remotely, to create art, and we're exploring new areas. And I expect that was really a message learned from what we'd been through in the pandemic and how we'd create those artworks. And it gave us the confidence to shift into this artwork, I would say.
Yeah, and again, the idea of going back to our core value, stories. We were the facilitators of these students that were all from around the world, that were just locked into Manchester. They couldn't go anywhere. And this was the first night one of the students could go outside. And that beautiful moment of them, I think this is All Saints as well, so it was one of the cherry blossom trees, just taking that photograph. And we digitally printed these so that they looked abstract, but as soon as you put your phone towards it, you could see the picture on your phone. And also it would have all of the stories and poems they did. But we also love the idea of the Royal College, Northern College of Music was a building that was quite mysterious. And the old Willy Wonka film of Charlie Bucket at the gate looking in, what's going on in there. So we worked with a team, and again this is about collaboration, with a team where they opened up these doorways, and we kind of negotiated with all the students to just do a little set for 10 minutes. So we just showed that skill set of looking through, that the work we make doesn't have to be something we can walk around. It can be something experiential, it could be object or spatial as well. And all of these fascinating things came just by experience of applying and doing things.
Sorry, and that back, just go back. Yes. Yeah, we're also we're learning here about how people connect to art as well, and how they connect to what we create. So this piece, we're sort of observing how people are interacting with it as well. So we've already designed it so that when you put your phone to it, it reveals the image. And this is a really good photograph just showing how people use their phones. It inspired our next artwork. We learned from this piece.
So this one was called Seed. So we worked again, it's collaboration, but it was with charities. So different institutes, different clients will have a different experience in the way that you respond to something creatively. And this was amazing, but overwhelmingly scary, because they asked us to collect from the community remotely acts of kindness over COVID. And we had some wonderful stories of people dressing up as Elvis to go outside the old people's home to sing songs, food banks, making the COVID masks, communities, burying communities, helping each other out. And each one we have is a seed of kindness, and we manufactured and made them ourselves. And what it does is, in the middle of that, we wanted to have like a seed bank, and what that represented, you know, a store of something to put aside for those cold times. And when you click on that QR code, the legacy came because the QR code went straight to all of those stories again. And each one showed that act of kindness. But in the process of making it, it was very powerful. There were people talking very seriously about some powerful things that they were questioning to carry on. And we felt that power, and we were trying to get that right. And the way we did that was connecting with these individuals. And it wasn't, right, we've got that, we'll carry on, we'll make you this, we'll do a kind of token Q&A, and then there you go, you're welcome. We wanted to have some legacy, and we wanted to have it where it felt something. And Oldham is a very deprived area. I'm from Oldham myself. I have to say, when I was 16, I wanted to leave as soon as I could. And I live just in the more rural part of Oldham now. I've come back. But when we did that, I was like thinking historically, that'll get trashed. They won't like it. They'll moan about it. It's still there after years. People photograph it, people talk about it. And that's a very, very powerful thing for the people that were involved, but also for us to have the luxury and gratitude to make it. I'll have to wrap up soon.
So this is a real turning point for us, because we are connecting locally, connecting to projects and people that we feel connected to. It's part of our story, it's part of our heritage as well. And also we've seen a shift in cultural funding. You know, it's moving from cities and the focus on cities, you know, and individuals to communities and towns. So actually that's working in our favour. Also happens to be work that we love. So this is Tameside Council commissioning us on a heritage themed project. And it actually is right by where we live, and we focused on history and heritage of the area, and we actually translated that into a much more modern artwork for their collection.
Yeah, we've followed the river, and each one had a blue plaque, and each one we tried to find who that was. And we didn't want them to just be rich mill owners. We wanted to know who were a part of this community, part of the history. We took samples of the Tyne River. If we know now, pollution-wise, we would have been a bit more careful. But we used those components to mix materials. When we use a commission, we love the idea of actually using the raw materials of a story. So each component that we made in this graphic artwork represents some of the unsung heroes. And we were saying about this thing of the last one, the Seed project, was giving people a voice visually, creatively, that not necessarily they would usually get. And that was something very powerful for us as designers. It doesn't have to be objectified or spatial to work. We would want it to get this concept of connecting with stories and people. And then we also started to look at our practice. And this was over the COVID period. We collaborated with Winter and Kurth, ex-Manchester students as well, aren't they? Manchester Met. And we did a home collab remotely. And what we said was, we're going to make our artwork or design objects only by what comes in. And this was literally about 4 days waste, wasn't it? We apologise in advance. And what we decided to do, we started to use these waste materials. That's something that we would discard. The impact was, in the civil, kind of all the connections of like the bin services, everything reduced, didn't it, for about 2 weeks? And all our stuff started to pile up. So we started to use all that internal paper from Amazon. Do you know when you get there, just like a magician's sleeve, just for a shampoo or something like that. And we're like, how do we use this sustainably? So the bottle piece on the left was made from Amazon and letters and packaging materials. The things on the right were used from natural food dyes as well. Yes, yep. And then this started as a question about working sustainably, but also using sustainability as a question to others. So this is work that we made with some students at college, and that was about them to bringing in a day's worth of food packaging. The main reason with this was it's not just to make something as a monument about waste, it was also thinking food packaging, they're beautifully designed. They have these anonymous authors that make these beautiful things, but we just discard and throw them. Could they be used for mould making? Could there be a new hybrid approach to how we use waste materials to create artwork and design work? Do we have to solely focus on the end product for it to be important? And the students were brilliant. They dictated the process, the composition. They really took forward this. And what was really inspiring for me when I was working with those was how important these things are to that generation. You know, this is our world. When you leave it, we know we're going to inherit this. And there were really powerful things that came out of these workshops.
And this sort of brings us, excuse me, this brings us to now, you know, so this is actually a commission we've just finished. We've worked on it for a year, and it's almost like it's brought together all of those years of experience, and it's brought us to 3 quite big commissions in a restoration project in Rochdale, near where we live, Rochdale Town Hall, absolutely stunning building. If you've not seen it, it opens in March. It's a £25 million restoration project. And we were commissioned to create 3 artworks in this space, working with 10 communities across Rochdale. We really tuned into all of our skills. You know, we were able to really return to our handcraft and share those skills with others. It was a really special project. And then we've been able to translate all of that into artworks as well.
And again, it was working with people going, I can't do art. I can't make, I can't draw. Yes, you can. Everybody can. And it was about that facilitating role that we, as artists and designers, not just to make things of beauty or things that people love, that we've got something else which is a value, is that the way we make things, we can share now. And we can share with people that not necessarily would have the confidence to do that. This building is so rich with craft skills from a broad range of disciplines. And what is beautiful for us is that we've started to facilitate each member of that community can look up now at that artwork and see their work there. And they're a new chapter of this building, alongside some of the best craftspeople in Europe at that time. And they're there. And that's going to be a really moving thing for us. And it's made a paramount shift to our practice. That doesn't necessarily mean we're going to continue to do that, because what is one of the best things you can do in your practice is be malleable. Respond to the environments you live in, the situations that happen globally and locally, and just go with it.
Yeah. I think our final slide, we got
Yes. Sorry if we've gone over.
So just to end, this is one of the artworks we created. And as Mike was saying, this is a space that was not accessible. It's a really, really stunning building, but it was not accessible to the community around it. The transformation project was all about making every single space accessible for all. And I think that just really taps into how we like to work now, you know, about connecting to communities, making artwork accessible. You can do that. You know, they can sit side by side. You know, you can work locally, you can work wider. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it. Thanks for listening.
Sorry for going over.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm inspired. I don't know about you guys. Fantastic. So before we get into, I'm dying to ask questions already, but we need to hear from Coral first. Coral is from Emiko, a sort of studio that you founded 4 years ago. They are now a team of 9 fantastic girls designing and crafting all clothing in their 2 micro factories in Stockport. They make clothing from natural or recycled fibres, dead stock fabric, and vintage and damaged materials to give them new life. Inspired by Japanese silhouettes and vintage workwear pieces, they now have a huge international audience. At Emiko, they're passionate about supporting all creatives, big and small, as they know the importance of having a platform. Their second microfactory has now opened in Stockport and is a creative studio space for hot desking, workshops and events. And they are also setting up a studio for photography and podcasting, which is fantastic. So welcome to the stage.
Hi, I'm Coral. Nice to meet you. So I am the founder of Emiko, a responsibly made clothing brand based in Stockport, where we have 2 microfactories. So we are a slow fashion brand based in Stockport, where we have a microfactory set in our bricks and mortar store, and we have just opened a second location as a microfactory, creative studio, co-working space, photography and podcast studio. So our online store is made to order. What does made to order mean for us? So when you place an order online, you choose your own size, but because it is a made to order piece, we cut it from a pattern that is in your size, and then we can change inseam lengths to your desired height, tall, short, average. We can also change sleeve lengths. Sometimes we can change fabrics, colours. Because all orders are cut individually, we have the freedom to do this, which a lot of other brands can't do. Why do we offer made to order? Each piece is cut individually, so we have the freedom to make these choices. Also, it avoids mass production, creating waste, which we obviously want to avoid. The positives to made to order are, like I've said, making it personal. It's a one-off piece just for you, especially if you can make the adjustments in fabric and colour. Negatives are it's very time consuming. It takes a lot longer to cut each garment from a different piece of roll. So when our seamstresses are going through the orders, they will have to pick the roll of fabric to the order, take the pattern, and it's a very lengthy process. If you're cutting, 10 pieces in the same roll, it can take maybe half an hour, 45 minutes. It takes just as long to do one piece. So it's quite a commitment. Also, exchanges. If somebody wasn't happy with their order, you're now left with a piece that you've made bespoke for them, and you might not be able to sell it. This has actually been a conversation this week in store, and we are changing the way that we run made to order, but I'll discuss that at a later stage. I think I've missed something, sorry. No, I haven't. A bit about me and how it started. I've always been a clean clothing lover. I taught myself how to sew because I was very, very small. I was in kids' clothes for a very long time. So I taught myself how to sew, take up hems. I loved vintage clothing from a really young age. So when I went through the charity shops and the vintage shops, it was really handy that I could sew and customise the pieces. After school, I studied art at Foundation. I really wanted to get into fashion design, but I didn't really have the confidence. I didn't feel like it was a realistic career. So I did art because I was quite creative, which then brought me on to fashion design at University of Brighton. I only did a 2-year course here. Is it called a BTEC? Can't remember. But it was amazing because it was all crammed together. learn the basics of pattern cutting, but I really enjoyed pattern cutting, which has obviously became handy now, and made a full collection as well. Once I came out of uni, I was stuck in retail for a few years. I think I tried to get a fashion job for about 5 or 6 years. I couldn't get anywhere. I was lucky enough to get a garment technologist job. I moved to Bangladesh for a month, where I got sacked because I questioned their morals. I worked for a fast fashion brand, sourcing brand, and obviously saw how fast fashion was about 10 years ago now. And yeah, I asked a lot of questions and they didn't like it, so I went home, which obviously changed the way that I think about everything, so it was great. After I came back from there, I then did a TEFL course to teach kids English in Hong Kong. I wanted to move to Hong Kong because I was just obsessed with Asia. It's very westernized out there, so I thought it's a good move for me. I spent 5 years there, had a baby. I couldn't find clothing for her. I wanted to have like gender neutral clothing for her. I didn't want to buy pink unicorn t-shirts or I don't know, blue t-shirts with tractors on. There was like nothing in between. So I started to make clothing for her. I got a little bit of a buzz out about it. People liked what I was doing. So I made a few pieces. I think you can see in the bottom right. I did a couple of markets, and that was great. So I went on Instagram. I didn't really get any sales on online or Instagram. I got a few sales at the market, but it was enough because I was getting somewhere. And then when COVID hit, I moved back to the UK where I tried to get back into it, but it was very difficult. I was stuck at home with my daughter. So I tried my best online, but it didn't really work out for a very long time until it did. And I started doing adults clothing. So what's important to us in our practice? We only use natural fibres and dead stock fabrics. This was a commitment that I made to not use any plastics. As a mum, I have morals to do my bit for climate change. So we don't use polyester at all. Polyester is actually really, really cheap. So the cost of cotton or denim is up to 3 times more than polyester. So it is quite difficult with the markup, which is the reason why we don't sell to boutiques. But in case you didn't know, dead stock fabric is end of rolls that designers or brands don't use, that usually go to landfill. So in the first image, this is a dead stock fabric warehouse where absolutely everything has been given to them because designers don't use them. But yeah, we do a ready-to-ship collection now. So we make one-off pieces that go online that can be shipped within 1 to 2 days, so you don't need to wait for the lead time, out of dead stock fabric. Minimum waste. We minimise wastage when we cut patterns. So usually in mass production, they layer up a ton of fabric. They use these huge cutting materials, and you can't really control the wastage. They're trying to get out as much pieces as possible, but when you're doing one piece at a time, it's much more cost effective, and any waste that we do have, we recycle. There's also small batches made to order, like I've discussed. And we also follow this through with recyclable packaging, recycling waste, down to our swing tags, thank you cards, everything. Our bricks and mortar store. I don't know why I've written all this because it doesn't even match up. Why Stockport? Stockport has a huge textile manufacturing and garment manufacturing history. I'm actually from Birmingham, so I don't know much about Stockport, but when I moved to Manchester 3 years ago and came to Stockport, there's just something about it that's really charming. The architecture and all the little independents as well. They're all really supportive of each other, so it's an amazing community. I'm really glad that I chose Stockport for our physical store. Team members, we have 8 altogether, including myself. There's 6 seamstresses, 1 admin assistant, and 1 weekend girl who helps with content. And was getting a store the right decision? Yes and no. Everything was made to order. No, wrong note. God, I'm so sorry. Right, I'm going to stop now. Was getting a store the right decision? Yes, it was, because it massively helped the brand elevate. Customers started to trust us a little bit more, and it gave us the chance to expand the team, because I was in my garage before that. So when we started out, I think I hired 2 or 3 part-timers. But it's great for the customer side. When they're coming in, you get to see what they're looking at. You get to speak to the customer. It's quite nice that the customer can choose. They can choose adjustments with the garments. They can watch the clothing being made, which you usually don't have. Usually it's behind closed doors. But we're pretty transparent with all that. Obstacles are finances. Since I've started this, I've not had a salary myself. There's a lot of pressure because you're now paying for rent, bills, salaries. So it's really, really difficult. Also, I don't know if you know Stockport well, but it's under massive construction at the moment. So we've also got literally opposite the store, they're just completely destroying the Mersey. So it's really hit our footfall, which is a shame. But within 1 to 2 years, it should get a little bit better. So this is the team. There's me. I have an assistant manager called Izzy. Anita is a seamstress and painter, so we hand paint our garments. I was doing it all myself, but it was quite a lot, so Anita helps me now. Dina is a seamstress, and she also specialises in bridal. We released a bridal collection a couple of months ago. And Lucy and Kate are also seamstresses. I have Molly, who is everything admin, and Hannah, who is a sales assistant and content creator. Online, let's try and find my notes again. Online has been our main source of sales from the beginning and still now. So I would say up to 90% of our sales come from online. The store is doing pretty horrifically at the moment. Obstacles are learning how to set up a website myself. I didn't have the finances to pay somebody to do it, so I've had to learn everything from scratch. Making it simple and straightforward for the customer. Somebody gave me some advice a couple of weeks ago and told me basically the website is absolutely terrible and you can't find this, that and the other. So it's learning all that, but it's also great to be in control of that, because you can give it to somebody else to do, but you don't have full control of what's going on, and you should know about your analytics and everything like that. Social media. So Instagram is a massive one for us, and TikTok. On Instagram, we've run ads to increase our our audience. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We introduced TikTok nearly a year ago. I have a love-hate relationship with it because sometimes Hannah is the main person that does content on TikTok, but sometimes she will do something and maybe something goes viral and there's a pair of trousers and we'll sell, I don't know, 20 in a day and it's great. And then we invest more money into doing more content and it doesn't work. It's quite hard to know what's right and what's wrong. It's all a guessing game. Advice for you: learn how to make your own website, learn about analytics, watch YouTube videos, social media, practice. Production. From the order, we choose the pattern and size from the collection. Trace the pattern on top of fabric, making any adjustments if needed. Usually trace with chalk or wax because this usually gets pressed off with an iron. The pieces are cut, usually with scissors or an electric fabric cutter. Then overlocked, which is what Izzy's doing in the background. This is the joined fabric with 4 sewing needles. So the ends of the fabric become durable in the wash and they don't fray. They're then machine sewn together. We then have a buttonhole machine that does the buttons. We hand sew the buttons on. Everything gets pressed and packaged, so the whole team get involved with every aspect of production. Social media, again, because it's really, really important. I think it's really important for any small brand as it gives you the platform to reach your audience. How often do I need to be posting? Every single day. I usually put up about 2 or 3 stories a day, just so people don't forget about us. I usually post every day or every other day, but post and stories as often as you can. What is important? So sometimes I choose a garment that I would like to push or maybe that's had a bit of interest. And we will show you the manufacturing process from start to finish. I think people like that process. They like being quite nosy on how something becomes a piece of clothing from the fabric at the beginning. Working with influencers, I've had a good and bad experience. The good is obviously more exposure. You see clothing on different body types and styles. It can grow your audience and increase sales. But the bad side of it is a lot of them want to get paid now, and as a small brand, you don't really have the funds to do that, especially if you're gifting clothing. And also it invites criticism as well. So we don't really do it anymore, which is a shame. But it also doesn't feel very sustainable as well. Miru Mill, so this is the second location. So we have the whole ground floor from November. The mill is about a 5-minute walk from the shop, which is amazing. It's hidden behind some houses with a little cobbled road. Apparently it used to be a silk mill, or I think it was silk and then cotton and then sweets. But as soon as I walked in there was just something really special about it. So one of the back rooms is our micro factory. This also gives us the opportunity to grow our team and work with work experience. We don't really have the space in the shop anymore to take on work experience. And we get quite a lot from universities. We're also taking on 2 apprentices from MMU next month, so it's great that we can have the space to do that now. This room that you can see now is a creative co-working space. The aim for this was so we could so everybody could work together, network or collaborate. We've had a couple of workshops already with a lady who makes sculptures. We've done 2 pop-ups. One of the pop-ups was an independent market just before Christmas, which was really successful. And we just had one on Saturday for second-hand clothing as well, and our sample sale. But you can also hire the desks daily or weekly or monthly. What I don't have photographed right now is the photography studio and podcast room because it's currently being developed. But right next door to this, we have a huge photography studio that anybody can hire out, and a podcast room. So the future, we would love to collaborate with local creatives. We have started a project at the moment where our clothing is unisex, but a lot of our audience is female. So we tried to look outside the box. We took on a project with 2 guys who are there's a videographer and a photographer, and they choose a male creative in Manchester. We interview them and they give us a brief on what sort of clothing they find important in their line of work. So for the first project we did, Joe Hartley, who is a ceramicist and gardener. So he gave us a brief of knee patches, lots of pockets for tools. He wanted a gilet because it's warm, but he can move his arms about. He doesn't really like wearing aprons, but there was a kimono jacket that he had. And I thought, what if we made a kimono wrap apron with the potter's knee split? So we made a few pieces for him. They got photographed and I'm hoping they get released next week. But I think it's a really good project for us to do because when we have a brief, we think outside the box. We also will release this line of clothing because maybe there's an audience out there who would like that sort of clothing too. Feeding our knowledge with students and apprentices. One thing that I found really hard is hiring seamstresses. So I think if we feed our knowledge into students, they'll become more and more confident that you can be a seamstress. You can have a successful career as a seamstress. It's not sitting at a dull desk all day doing piecework. It's actually a lovely environment where we work. The girls, it's a great team. We put podcasts on, we talk all day. It's not like I don't know what the word is. I'm losing my mind now. I'm so nervous. It's not whizzing through the machines all day. It's a really nice community and there is progression there as well. But also moving away from made to order. So this week we made the decision that we can't have a business that grows as a made to order clientele. The piecework is taking too long. So we've decided to try small batches, very small batches, to make sure that we're not creating too much waste. It's a bit of a test right now, but I'll give you an example. On Monday, we made 40 pairs of trousers. During the week, we make 40 orders between all of us seamstresses. So it's a lot more efficient, but I'm not sure if it will work. So yeah, we'll see, but that's it.
Thank you so much, all of you. They were really, really interesting, insightful talks. As I said, loads of notes, many synergies I'm sure you all spotted as well. So having sustainable practice, not only in terms of it being sustainable to the world, but sustaining yourselves, and how you keep longevity in your practice. I really liked the question you posed, Michael, of can you earn a living from handmade? I suppose I'd like to put that question back to you, all of you.
No.
Good night.
I think that's the reason why I've changed the made-to-order model. What we're doing now is not working, and the more we scale up, maybe the more seamstresses I have and the more overhead. So I don't see why that would work. But yeah, there is obviously a positive to it, having the more freedom and yeah.
That's probably a slightly unfair question. I didn't want to make it touchy, but I think what came through your talk and yours was actually that constant pivoting and changing and sort of adapting. It's quite a creative factor. I wonder if you could sort of reflect on that a little bit.
Yeah. I think when we were saying about can you make a living from handmade, it's a difficult one because the premise of our skills is handmade. But it's about a perception from the person who's buying that. They want that kind of personal story, they want that quality, but they don't necessarily want to pay for it most of the time. So it's a difficult thing. You've got to kind of get a balance in that. But I think for us, we've learned to have a bit more like of an umbrella profile in terms of learning how we get our income streams in. And again, very matter-of-fact things, and as creative, sometimes I get a bit petulant because I want to do creative stuff and I don't want to do the ins and outs of these, but they're really integral to how you reach an audience as well by doing these different platforms, approaches to your practice as well.
Yeah, well, completely agree. And the only thing I will say about handmade is, it is incredibly difficult to make it work for you. We know that, but we wouldn't be doing the type of projects we do now if we hadn't been on that journey, if we hadn't absolutely learned our craft and fine-tuned those skills. It's been such an important thing to do, to push ourselves to work in that way. And then we've learned so much from it. So we bring all of that to all the projects we work on. We like to think that there's something about our original material, clay, running through every project we do. You can almost see it sometimes, see that learning, and that skill and that craft we've learned from it, and we apply it, and actually we bring it into many of our projects where the outcomes are nothing to do maybe with clay or ceramics, but it becomes our starting point. So the handmade is telling a story in all our projects, I think, in a way.
That's really nice. I also picked up on you talking in a couple of the different projects about, you talked about packaging and having anonymous authors and kind of the unsung heroes of the mills and past, and obviously you're very passionate about where you are in Stockport because of those unsung heroes, and maybe that links in with this kind of theme of sort of the understanding the value of craft and making as a skill, and is that potentially why you have chosen to have your makers like literally right there? You can see exactly what's going into your product.
Yeah, I think so. There's not many people that have a microfactory in a store, or even show. There are some through Instagram. You can see some brands that are showing more and more factories, but yeah, there's not really any stores out there that show that. But yeah, there's something really nice about keeping it in Stockport. There's something really special that's going on in Stockport at the moment with independence. So it's really exciting what's going on there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really special place. And as a university, we're involved in kind of some of the development that's happening in Stockport. And we'll see where that goes, and hoping to get some of you students involved as well. I've lost my train of thought. Which is really annoying. Oh my God, it really has gone. We could throw out some questions. I still have a million, but please do.
I've got a question. So, when you were students, what did you think the skills and knowledge that were important for you to acquire when you were students? And are they the skills and knowledge that you found that you're using or are still important? Or do you think maybe those have changed and maybe what you could or should be learning as students, has that changed?
I think it's necessary to have a foundation skill set and an understanding of the industry by working by hand. I think it's massive to learn working with hands. We're saying about the value of handmade. One of our core values is malleability, which is one of the biggest personalities of clay. And what is really important for us was not only to learn the skill set at this institute, but it was to understand how we could kind of grow that within the practice. And again, we had to make our own moulds, manufacturing silicon moulds to see what we can do and what we can't do. But has it changed? Yeah, it changes when you go out into the industry in the big wide world. But what I would say, what is really important for everybody here, is the preparation that you get here is massive. It's essential because you've got to be resilient. There's a lot of questioning. There's a lot of self-doubt. Well, there was for myself and Rebecca. But we just had something in there that we knew if we continued, if we kept going, it would work.
Yeah. I think what I will say about your time, as a student is it's this really important time to play, to be playful with material and to express yourself and use that, and really enjoy it because, it's not that easy to always have those moments in your creative practice. We try to feed them in, embed them in our practice. You can probably see it in some of our artworks and some of our outcomes, like the chewing gum platter, lots of play in there, lots of bit of fun. So, but that is actually learned at university in a way because you're starting to really tune into the materials that you love to work with, and the practice and the techniques. But, just really enjoy that. I remember doing that here. I remember being taught skill and being taught craft. And that was really important, but I was also allowed to have space to be innovative and creative and play as well. And when you come out of university, that time, is much more reduced and limited. So, enjoy it.
Do you want to speak to that at all?
I think if you're doing anything creative at university, it's going to massively impact your career for the better. I think I've spoken to a couple of people that haven't done anything creative and they've gone through a completely different path. But when you've done something creative, you'll always use those skills.
Any more questions from the audience? There must be some.
Well, while you think, I was just going to draw on what you said. That sort of towards the end of you speaking, I wrote down constantly learning, evolving, responding, pivoting, and maybe it's that creative kind of background that brings us into the spaces that we end up being. I wanted to ask a little bit about collaboration. So I think you all mentioned working with other people. What different forms of collaboration, how important do you think those are into progressing your practices?
Firstly, we work with institutes, individuals, charities, clients, and each one has advantages and disadvantages. There was one particular institute that were determined to dictate the creative process, and that was up to us to have the confidence and belief to say, no, this is what we're going to do, and this is what you've hired us for. So each person or group or institute you work with, you just build another skill set, you build another experience. I think that's it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like my project with Joe, it makes you think outside the box, do something new, and you might realise that it's something positive for the business as well. But I always like working with creatives, it's really fun. as well. It's nice to do something different.
And that notion, I think that you all sort of reflected, you've gone from quite global kind of thinking to very local and drawing on that who's nearby and who can you directly participate with. Really amusing that you both mentioned Joe Hartley in your... those of you on the craft course will probably know Joe from filling and lecturing last year, but if you don't know Joe Hartley, do go look him up. He's a brilliant local creative and gets his fingers in lots of pies, very obviously. Are there any questions that have come up in the audience? Oh yeah, fabulous. Need to get quicker, Fab.
Hello. I was just wondering what it's like to be self-employed, or what have you learned from running your own sort of businesses in a way? So.
Yeah, I'll go first. I think it's obviously really difficult at times. You obviously have that freedom to do what you want when you want, but realistically you need to be making money. You have to do that. But yeah, it's an amazing thing, and it's also full of pressure. At the moment I'm really feeling it, to be honest. After December things are really, really difficult. But yeah, there's positives and negatives. You just have to push through it. You have to evolve. You have to think outside the box, which I'm trying to do. And you will get through it if you work through it. I hope.
You will.
The word's adaptability, but also what you see on the Instagram image is not necessarily what is there. You know, it's behind the Wizard of Oz curtain. I will have to kind of find income from teaching. And at first I had a duality. Do I teach? Do I do my self-employment? And I do both. And I thought they were separate, but they're not. They feed each other now. Each one is a healthy kind of conduit for the next thing. So it's about just having that adaptability and just being honest and saying that's okay if I've got to do a weekend shift to do this. If it means something to you, you do whatever it takes. And there'll be hardship, and it's feast or famine sometimes, and there's lots of self-doubt. But when you get there and when you do those things, especially when you reflect on them, which is brilliant for us today, it's been really gratitude I've felt just going through that, because it reminds us what we've done and how we've done it, and be proud of it, because we're always looking forward. It's sometimes to look back and just go, you know what, that was brilliant what we did there, and not in a pompous way, but in a way that we can build on it. You know, we've had that hardship, but we can move forward. And some of the people that we've met through this, it's amazing. And it's a cheesy analogy, but what I would say is, at the end of your latter years, when you got your scrapbook, don't have the what if. And that's what we decided. And it was hard. And we had a child when we started the business, which was a challenging thing, but a brilliant thing as well. Because our daughter comes back sometimes and goes, I just told my teacher that my mummy and daddy are artists, with pride. Don't know how long that will last, but I would just say, going back to that, it's just have the confidence to keep going, and also have the confidence to ask for help with collaborators in the community you work with. Stick together, stick with your peers. It will really help in the future.
Yeah, I don't know if I've got much to add to that. I think the only thing I would say is, transparency is everything, and I think it's a bit like what Michael said. It's very easy to look at somebody on social media and think they've got this perfect setup. And actually, if you scratch behind the surface, you'll find that most people, we are not freelance. We're very, very honest about it. We both teach, we both take in different contracts. I'm actually a creative project manager at the moment for a 10-month contract for a transformation project called Northern Roots. It's absolutely amazing. I do that 3 days a week and work on our practice 2 days a week. So transparency is everything, and just remember that most people are juggling in the creative industries. They are doing lots of different things to make it work, and having a part-time job here or another one here is totally normal, and it's okay as well.
Really great advice. Were there any more questions?
Actually, I've got one. I'm interested in your government report for how to trade outside the UK. I imagine things have changed a little since Brexit. Have they asked you for a revision?
I don't know if it's a good thing, but no. There was a number of us who did it. Majida Clark as well. She went to New York. There was another artist who went to Belgium. And what it was, is it was trying to make a toolkit for makers that were kind of coming out from university, giving good skills and tips about freight, carriage, import fees, and that has massively changed and shifted. But what they have done is that they keep continuing that, and I think it's a good thing. I haven't taken umbrage that they've got new designers and new makers to do that, and I think it's a really important thing. I would check that out on the Craft Council as well, because recently they did another import and export strategy plan, and you can download it as well. There's a lot of free resources out there if you look that will help you with your practice.
Great tip. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, you also mentioned that the Craft Council, you had some kind of mentoring scheme that you were part of. Do you know if that's still running, and what were the advantages of doing that?
It was called the Hot House Scheme. I think it's still running. They got a selection of designers and makers from around the country. It was absolutely integral. It was amazing. I'd come from quite a postmodern background as well, so I was writing all this theoretical stuff about our website, about the taxonomy of materiality, and we had a really good mentor who went, somebody on the dinner break doesn't really want to read that, Michael. They want to know about you. And there was just so many great tips. We looked at this pie chart and we thought, how much time do you spend making freelance? 95%. And I think it was around about 20%. And that's why I was saying, when you do make, value it, because it is massive for you. But what they did, they made us nurture our idea of how do we promote, who's our target audience, what about our story, how do we sell that, how do we promote that. And they had individuals from like Ceramic Review, Craft Council, it was thorough. But you know, the really nice thing is that we all did it together. We'd go to these beautiful buildings, wouldn't we, around the country to meet up. And it was a great way, it was a cathartic way to just say, oh God, I'm having really time at the moment. How about you? Well, I had the same. And that's what I mean, is that don't feel that your practice should be insular or singular. Be a part of something. Like you've mentioned, the inspirational stuff that's happening in Stockport is brilliant. And that will weather you through some storms. But if it does go through the hot house and if it's still available, I would really say to try and go for it. It'll extend your practice and your awareness of what to do massively. Okay. I hope I answered your question.
I was just going to, on that topic of mentoring, throw that back to you, Coral. And just curious what inspired you to take on work experience and sort of apprenticeships. It's really nice to see garment manufacturing opening up, still seen as a viable career.
When I did work experience at university, I basically sat in a chair and watched somebody sew for 2 weeks. And from my experience, a lot of other people did that too, or made tea and coffee. I think it's really good to have hands-on experience and experience as much as possible within a small brand. So that's why we took on work experience. I even did it in my garage at home, started as soon as possible. But we actually have like 5 or 6 next month, which will be a bit crazy. But I don't just put them on the machines and get them manufacturing. I usually give them a project each. So I'll tell them they can design something of their own, they can pick a fabric, and I will mentor them through start to finish. And they can take it home, encourage them to take lots of photos, ask lots of questions. Some people stay with us for a month. So we've actually employed 2. But yeah, I really enjoy doing it, and it's nice to give something back as well.
That's incredible. Yeah, I suppose I can relate. I sort of worked in the fashion industry for a little while. I did a year's placement in Primark, so I understand the the wounds of fast fashion. And actually, that brought me back to sort of thinking that you've all kind of reflected a little bit on life experiences. So your original kind of trying to, it was interesting that you used the phrase "I failed,"
Yeah.
where actually clearly you've built on that. It's not a failure at all. You've
Yeah.
kind of turned it into something really exciting, and how your work's grown from your family and your experience of being in Hong Kong. And I was going to ask you guys as well that clearly the pandemic had a massive impact on your particular practice, and I noticed a transition in your slides to slightly more digital work post pandemic, and wondered how you thought maybe if it hadn't happened, would that direction have happened, do you think?
Yeah. I think our practice was at a point where we were thinking about change anyway. So that was definitely a conversation we were having pre-pandemic. We were opening up, is this right for us? So I think, but the pandemic came along and really it kind of just speeded up. But also we lost all our work overnight, all our freelance work within weeks. And I think, the fighter came out in us. It was like, what are we going to do? Are we going to survive this? Or are we just going to go and have to get other jobs? So we had to really adapt and change. And that's that transition, into how do we adapt? Well, we're going to have to think about how we teach online, for example, how we maybe shift into other mediums. So that's really that story, and that's where that change came from. It's about survival part of it as well. It wasn't just about exploring different areas of our creative practice. It was about how do we survive in the creative industries, how do we keep our practice alive.
Almost like the word catalyst sort of comes to mind, and it kind of responding to the thing that life throws at you and having to adapt to move on with it. And I was going to ask all of you, actually, on that note, we had a little conversation in the department this week about the word pipeline, and how all you guys are expected to be on a pipeline into industry. And I'm curious how all of you feel about that kind of term, and do you think you knew exactly where you were going to end up?
Definitely not, especially with opening Miru Mill. I think it's really exciting what we're doing with that, and it takes the brand, it elevates the brand to a different level where we are educating people. I would also like to get work experience in the photography studio and podcast area. So I like where this is going. I don't just want to be a clothing brand anymore. There's opportunities to grow in that way as well.
Yeah, no was the original answer. I had no idea I thought I'd be here. Once I graduated from my masters, I got that, luxury of the exposure to get into the British Ceramics Biennial, and that was the paramount place. That was my kind of Everest. And when I got there, I didn't want to do it. And it wasn't being ungrateful. It just didn't feel what I wanted to do. And then when I started working with Rebecca, and we started to look at this more organic response to working with others, it just escalated from there. And I'm so glad I didn't dictate that process too much. And being malleable. And we said about failure, that word, I always say that. I've said it to when I teach. I've got it above my desk. It's the Beckett. Have you ever tried? Have you ever failed? No matter. Fail again, fail better. And it's just that kind of resistance. I love that way you were saying that fight. Sometimes you have it, and it brings out some great creative energy as well. But no, to answer your question, I didn't know I'd be at this point, but I'm so glad that I did put that foot in front of the other at the start.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add to that is, I feel like our practice has almost like come full circle in a way. We've ended up very much reconnecting to a bit of us and our story and where we're from and who we are. I don't think I ever thought that would happen, when we started out, or when I started out and studied art. And I suppose what I would say is, there's something in that, you know, and it might be that you travel through lots of different things, but actually connecting to a little bit about what you're about and who, you know, and who you are, maybe even where you're from, is actually, it's really powerful, you know, and think about that, you know, in your practice, because it can really resonate and it can really take you to really special projects and really help you find about where your fit is in the creative industry as well. And that's, you know, it's taken us a while. You know, you saw it through the slides, you know, and it was about us finding our fit and where we fit. And that was really about connecting a little bit back to who we are and where we're from. That's it.
Yeah, again, can completely relate. Day 3 of my first job out of after a degree, I was like, oh, is this it? But equally, you can sort of recognise that feeling of you sort of after years of thinking you're doing really drastically different things for a while. You're going, actually, I can see the thread that runs through these things. But hopefully that's something you can all take away, that you might know where you want to go, but actually be open to it changing and diverting. And the world, I think we've all learned through the pandemic, the world is going to throw things at us that we're not quite expecting, but that can be built upon and taken somewhere else. I'll stop babbling. Were there any more questions from the audience? No, everybody all good? How are we doing for time?
Yeah.
As in, wrap it up, Gemma?
I think, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, to a close.
Because you said good, I'm like, oh, great. Okay, amazing. Well, I'd like to thank you all so much. I personally have very much enjoyed listening to you speak. I'm sure everybody here has as well. And maybe we can check back in like another 10 years and see where the journey's gone.
Exactly.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Lovely.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
everyone.
you. Thanks.